Monday Night Football, the end of Week 15, and we got a doubleheader tonight as we have the Bears taking on the Vikings and the Falcons taking on the Raiders. I have a couple picks for each of these games coming in just a few moments. If you are new, my name's Austin from Calling Our Shot. Thank you for tuning in. Normally I do a separate video for each of these games, but I'll just combine it into one and give you my favorite picks in each of them and talk about them as the video goes on. If you are new, do me a favor, go down below, like and subscribe. I certainly would appreciate it. As always, we begin with a recap of how we did on Sunday. And it was not a good day for us, a 4-6 day. Now, we cashed our biggest prop of the day, which was A.J. Brown's over in receiving yards. That was a 1.5 unit play. Meant to note that on the screen. Our biggest prop cashed. Burrow's under, sweaty. Mahomes went under, and Kyler did not throw a pick. But we overexposed in the Bills and Lions game, lost 3 units there, 2 units in our SGP, 1 unit on the day 3 ladder. The other picks follow as so. You see that Herbert and Nix, I just combined them onto one line. 2 losses there. It has not been a good season for us. That dropped us into the negative on the year, which is obviously not ideal. I'm embarrassed, but the only silver lining from yesterday is that we actually cashed our anytime touchdown parlay. It's funny because the things that I have done so far this season that I have not tracked towards my record have been red hot. We're talking about the touchdown parlays. If you played each of them for a unit, you're probably up like 25 units on the season. And then if you played every single one of my spreads and totals and things like that, you'd be up a lot of money on the season. The only unfortunate thing is I don't normally play all of those for one unit. I don't track them towards my record. And alas, the props that we've been doing have not translated too well. So either way, we have a game pick today that we'll be tracking towards the record. And let's hopefully get hot to end the season. And hopefully we end week 15 on a good note and we can continue that the final few weeks of the season going into the playoffs. So I'm actually feeling pretty good. I know it has sucked so far this season if you've been back in the bets, especially over the last month. I know it hasn't been great, but hey, let's dive in, let's lock in, and let's have a great Monday Night Football and end this Week 15 on a positive note. Let's do it. And my last note, Kirk Cousins, free square on Underdog Fantasy. You guys know we love Underdog. You can play a lot of the props I'm about to talk about on Underdog. And if you use my code COS, you'll get this Kirk Cousins free square and a match on your first deposit up to $1,000. Again, code COS or the link down below. But let's start with these games, though. We love Underdog. You guys know that. Let's talk about these games. And I'll actually start with the second game, which is the Falcons and the Raiders. I kind of like this one a little bit more. I know it's going to be weird. A lot of people will like the other game, Bears-Vikings, more. I sneakily like this game, and I'll start with a 2-leg same-game parlay. It's 2 guys. I love their individual lines, but I just know their lines I feel like are pretty sharp. And let's talk about these 2 legs. Kirk Cousins to throw for 200 or more passing yards, and Bijan Robinson for 60-plus rushing yards. It's minus 150 on DraftKings. It might be minus 140 by the time you're looking at it. I believe it dropped there after I'd already placed it, but I'll track with whatever I place my bet at. Minus 150 is normally a little bit more juice than I play. However, I just was trying to find another leg to put in there, but I just know that third leg I put in there is going to lose. And I rather trust the 2 most confident reads. And that's Bijan to get yards on the ground and Kirk to get yards through the air. Combine those together, I think you got a winner. Now, I like Kirk at his regular line, but about 240-ish, 240 and a half. And I feel like that can be pretty sharp. I think he gets the 225 or more. But depending on game script, you might not get a lot of passing yards late in this one, and that could be what determines if he goes over or under that line. And Bijan, his line's in the mid-80s. And look, I think he could get there, but I think Tyler Algier will be used a little bit more tonight. And I still think Bijan easily clears 60, but he could end up with like low 80s or in the 90s. So I rather trust these 2 guys, 1 unit at minus 150. Now let's talk about Kirk. Address the elephant in the room. The brother has sucked his last 4 games, 0 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He has thrown, though, and hit this over in 3 of 4 with 306, 173, 245, and 344. And he has 200 or more yards in 11 of his last 12. Obviously, the books have seen that, and they don't care. His passing touchdowns line, despite not throwing 1 in 4 straight games, is 1.5, about even money both ways, about minus 110, minus 115. Why is that? Because they know the Raiders' secondary is terrible. We talked about this last week with Baker Mayfield. 6 straight QBs have now thrown for 250 or more yards versus the Raiders. The Raiders will also now be down Max Crosby, their best pass rusher. So even with Max Crosby's threat of rushing the passer, which he plays literally almost every single play, they still were throwing all over him. And that is a guy that got great pressure. Now they don't have that. So I think this is a get-right spot for Kirk Cousins. Do I think he's been great? No. But I think this is, if you're going to get confidence in Kirk Cousins for the last few weeks of the season, this has to be the spot that you say, hey, even if we're up 2 touchdowns, we want to keep building on Kirk Cousins' confidence going into the last 3 weeks of the season, given they are now 1.5 games behind the Buccaneers. If they win this one, they'll be 1 game back, and they have the tiebreaker there. I think this is a great spot to back Kirk Cousins. I think he throws it all around the field. I think he has a massive day. I think Kirk Cousins easily clears 200 pass yards. Now, as for Bijan Robinson, 60-plus rushing yards. He's done that in 8 of his last 9, 80-plus in 4 of his last 5. He's really taken this bell cow workload for this offense. And look, I think that's going to continue. Algier might get some snaps, but look, this is Bijan's backfield, and he will get the rushing yards tonight. The last 6 running backs to face the Raiders that had 10 or more rush attempts at 106, 76, 59, 120, and 73 and 90. So all these guys pretty easily cleared 60, except for Kareem Hunt, who averaged less than 3 yards per carry. Now with no Max Crosby, I think they'll be able to run it a little bit more efficiently in this game. As for the Raiders offense, what are we getting? Are we getting Aiden O'Connell, who's banged up, or Desmond Ridder in a revenge game? Either way, I just don't see them having a lot of being able to sustain a ton of drives here. My hope is that the Raiders don't just lean into the ground game and chew off the clock. But if they don't do that, I really think we'll see the Falcons be on the offense a lot. And I think we'll see Kirk throw for 200. Bijan gets 60. I know it's minus 150, a little juice. Like I said, I'd add maybe Darnell Mooney for 25 receiving yards, or maybe Drake London, heck, even Brock Bowers or Jacoby Myers. I just didn't have a lot of confidence in either of those two guys. So I'll lay some juice at minus 150. I was considering actually almost doing 1.5 units here. But again, we've been bad this season. I'd like to see one go through the hoop. 1 unit, minus 150 on those two fellows to come through. I love it. My next play is going to be a little bit of a ladder. Yes, our ladder lost yesterday, but that is a little bit different concept of ladder challenge. This is actually 2 plays on one guy, and it's Kyle Pitts. I'm having a half unit on him to get a 20-plus yard reception at plus 155 on Bet365, and another quarter unit on him to get a 30-plus yard reception at plus 500. Now, before you even go down below in the comments and say different, let me at least explain this one. If you go to FanDuel, you could take Kyle Pitts over in longest reception. That is, I think, 15.5, 16.5, 17.5, somewhere around those lines. I don't see a lot of value there. I think if Kyle Pitts is going to get a 16-yard catch, I think it's going to be at least 20 yards, and I think there's a chance he could hit this both in one foul swoop with a 30-plus yard reception. I consider taking his over in receiving yards, but the same thing. If it's 31.5, I don't see him getting there without one big one. It's not like, knock on wood, he's a 6 receptions, we're getting like 5 yards a pop. That's not really Kyle Pitts. He's more of a big play guy. Now, I understand there is some concern backing Kyle Pitts. He's been pretty bad, just like Kirk Cousins. With him goes Kirk Cousins, and we've seen the last 3 weeks, 9, 0, and 14 yards. I think it's safe to say he didn't get a 20 or 30-yard reception in there. But last week, what I'd like to see, 6 targets, 83 air yards. Now, what do air yards do us? Is most on the season for what it's worth. Do air yards get us anything? No. Now, it does give us a feeling of hope, like, oh, yes, the ball's in the air, and then Kyle Pitts drops it. But it does show that they're trying to get him the ball a little bit more. And the books, just like Kirk Cousins' past TDs line, they are thinking Kyle Pitts gets the ball a little bit here. And we look at Pitts' receptions lines, and at 2.5, about minus 120 to minus 125 on the over. 2+ receptions is minus 400. This is a guy that hasn't even had 2 receptions barely combined the last 3 games. But when he's seen 2 or more receptions in 8 games this season, he's hit the 20+ in 5 of 8, 30+ in 4 of 8. Again, Kyle Pitts is a big play guy. He's not a guy that's getting, 4-yard receptions left and right. He can do that, but normally they like to take some shots down the field, given he's 6'6", 6'7". He's pretty dang fast. I think this is, if there's ever a spot for Kirk Cousins and Kyle Pitts to get right, this is it. Because we see since week 7, the Raiders allowing the most receiving yards to tight ends this season at over 90 per game at 12 yards per reception. 12 yards obviously isn't 20 or 30, but again, we're talking a lot of tight ends that are mostly running those short routes. There's a guy in Kyle Pitts. We know he can catch the ball, turn upfield. We know he can go downfield and go over some guys. I think Kyle Pitts is going to get a lot of one-on-one coverage. Let's hope Kirk can hit him in stride. He can turn upfield and go for a big one. We've seen him do it time and time again, coming off 3 straight bad weeks. I think this is the Kyle Pitts week, which is why I didn't want to put Mooney or London or McLeod in there. I really think this is a Kyle Pitts week. I might look like an idiot, which is why I'm only limiting our risk at 0.75 units. If he gets a 20+ yard reception, we walk away winners. If he gets a 30+, it's a pretty good day for us. So I really like Kyle Pitts here. I think this is a good spot for him. So I'll take Kyle Pitts. Again, broken how you see on the screen, a 20+ yard reception, which FanDuel lets you do that, but there's only like plus 115, and a 30+ yard reception, which I want to say FanDuel is in the plus 300. So great value on Bet365, a half unit on the first one, a quarter unit on the second. Kyle Pitts, I need you to lock in. Now we move to the second game. In terms of leans in that game, I lean the Falcons, but it's not a very hard lean. I just don't. I mean, it's hard to really give you a lean when I don't know what the Raiders are trying out there under center. I don't have a great lean in that game. I just think we see some points and probably a lot from the Falcons side. As for the second game, we move to the Bears and Vikings game, a game that I have a game pick here and I have a player prop, and they kind of go hand in hand. It's a game that I actually don't see a ton of points coming. I'll talk about that in a second. My favorite player prop is 1 unit on Jordan Addison, under 4.5 receptions, minus 150 on BetMGM. I'd personally play this about minus 175. If I were the one making the lines for Jordan Addison, I'm putting the line at 3.5. Maybe a little bit juice towards the over, maybe like minus 130, minus 140. A 4.5, I think, is just too high. And sure, I understand why Jordan Addison has a 4.5 receptions line. I'm not saying take his under in yards. He's a big play guy. But last week, he obviously had a massive week against the Falcons. 8 receptions, 130 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then you saw a couple weeks ago, 8 receptions, 162 versus the Bears. I think this is a good spot to fade him. Now, we've seen when you match up against a team twice, especially in the span of 3 or 4 weeks, the defenses typically have the advantage, in my opinion. You get to see an offense the whole time. It's not like they're running a bunch of different play calls or different plays. You kind of already seen it. So you've seen the play sheet. You've had a whole week to address it. And has the Bears defense been good? Absolutely not. But I think this is a good spot to fade Jordan Addison. On the season, the Bears have allowed the fewest receptions to wide receivers. And sure, their defense hasn't been great since week 10, the third fewest at only 9.8 per week. Now, their pass defense hasn't been great. No, I'm not saying it's been really, really good, but they have been pretty bad on the ground. So we could see maybe Cam Akers and Aaron Jones get going. And I just don't like this Addison spot, backing him back-to-back weeks, expecting him to have big games. Addison has 5 receptions in only 3 of 11 games, so is under an 8 of 11. He hasn't gone back-to-back games going over. And yeah, like I said, he had 8 last week. I just think this is a good spot to fade him. Gonna look like an idiot? Yes, but he's a big play guy. Last time these two teams played, they basically doubled. Justin Jefferson said, all right, Hawkinson and Addison have fun. And they obviously got torched by those guys. They both had over 100 yards. Maybe this game they play a little bit more too high coverage. So taking away the big plays, which is where Addison does the majority of his work. And maybe this is a Justin Jefferson week. Also, I don't know if it's a big Sam Darnold week, and I'll talk about that in a second, but 1 unit on Jordan Addison under 4.5 receptions. And then finally, I have a half unit play on how I feel this game goes. And that is the Bears and Vikings under 44.5 points, minus 115 on Fanatics. I haven't done a lot of game picks this season. But I should have, because my record on them has been pretty good this season. Originally, going into this game, I kind of liked the Bears team total at 16.5, but that's been bumped up. And I actually think this is a bad spot for both offenses. You could look at this and sure, you could say, hey, the Vikings just dropped 42 points. I get it. But when you score 42, it's hard to kind of string together back-to-back good games. And we saw in that first matchup back in week 12, these two teams combined for 57 points. Granted, 3 of them came in OT. 800 yards of offense. I think it was closer to 850. And red zone trips. 6 of 10 turn into touchdowns. That's obviously a very high rate. I look at this and I think they were way too efficient. And as I've said, I think defenses second time around to have a little bit more of the leg up here. And I think both these defenses are due some better regression. We talk about this Vikings defense. They play a ton of too high coverage. And this is a Caleb Williams who has been better versus too high coverage, but hasn't been great this season, like 26th in pass attempts or pass yards per attempt versus too high coverage. I'm sure he threw it 47 times the last time they faced. I mean, what are we talking about? Is he going to throw it 47 times again? Unlikely. I think if the Bears are going to do anything, maybe we lean into the ground game a little bit more. I know they're banged up there, but they are not winning games with Caleb Williams throwing it 47 times. It's just not going to happen. And we look at this Vikings defense. They've been pretty good. I think they're number 1 in DVOA. They have given up some points, though, 20 plus in 3 straight. Maybe this is a game where we see their defense tighten up. We know how big of a game this is for the Vikings. They just saw the Lions lose yesterday, and they're right on their heels for the division. And I think they still play each other. And if you maybe next week, a few weeks from now. Again, I think this is a spot we see Darnold the first time he played the Bears. I had his over in interceptions, and that brother tried to throw like 4 interceptions, and he just kept getting lucky and lucky. Does he continue to get lucky? I don't think so. So I think we see some turnovers here. Let's hope they don't lead to some great field position. I think we see some field goals. I think people will love the overs. 57 points last game. The Vikings offense is humming. I think this is a lower scoring game, and I might look like an idiot, but I think it's a lower scoring game. I think this is two teams that lean on the ground a little bit more, given how I think the defenses adjust to what happened the first time these two teams played. So we really see a lot more groundwork, and I think we see maybe some third downs, and we're going to have to convert those. And if they don't convert them, we'll see some punts. I really like the under in this game at 44.5. I was surprised to see it that low, given what we've seen from these two offenses, or especially the Vikings offense. But I think that's an indicator that I think this game goes under. I think we see a final score. I'll give you a final score prediction. I think we're going to see 24 for the Vikings, and I think 13 for the Bears. So I think that's like 37 points. I think it's a low scoring game. I'll take a half unit because I don't want to put a full unit on the under, but I do like the under. So those are my 4 favorite picks in this video. The first one was Kirk Cousins, the Bijan same game parlay. Then we had the Kyle Pitts 20 and 30 yard reception. Go Kyle Pitts. Then we had Jordan Addison under receptions and the full game under in the Bears Vikings game. Let's have a bounce back day. Let's go 4-0 across all those picks. I hope we have a big day, and I know the reads are going to start to go our way, and I really like this card today. And we're not overexposed in one game. We're just kind of sprinkling around. I think we had a good spot. I know it's not been the greatest season, but we're bouncing back. Let's have a good Monday. I'll have our NBA video live in a little bit. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. It's Austin. I'm signing out. I'll see you guys back in the next one. If you want to sign up for Underdog, I would appreciate it. Use my code COS or the link down below and get a match on your first deposit up to $1,000. And you get that Kirk Cousins free square. Have a great Monday. Good luck. Let's have a week. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.